It's the morning of Tuesday, October 22nd, 1907. In Manhattan, on the corner of 5th Avenue and 34th Street, there's a line of people stretching down the block. It's cold. The line started forming before sunrise. By 9 o'clock, there are hundreds of people in line. By mid-morning, there are thousands. They are all there for the same reason. They want their money back. The building they are lined up to enter is the Knickerbocker Trust Company. It's the third largest trust company in the United States. It holds, on this morning, $62 million in deposits. The President of the United States is Teddy Roosevelt. The Federal Reserve does not yet exist. There's no FDI insurance. There's no deposit insurance. No one is coming to help. By the time that police arrive to keep order, the New York Times reporter on the scene is writing this line down, and I'm going to read it to you in his words. Quote, as fast as a depositor went out of the place, 10 people and more came asking for their money. End quote. By the end of that single day, $8 million walked out the door. And by the end of the week, the bank was closed. By the end of the month, the New York Stock Exchange has fallen nearly 50% from its previous year's peak, and the panic had spread to every major city in the country. Now, here's the part of this story that matters for everyone watching this video. The Knickerbocker Trust was not a small institution. It was not run by criminals. It was not, on the morning of October 22nd, technically insolvent in any way the public had been told about. It was, until about 96 hours earlier, considered one of the safest places in America to keep your money. So what changed in those 96 hours? Welcome to Invest AI Savvy. Welcome to Sunday, May 17th, 2026. And for anyone landing on this channel for the first time, a quick word about me. I'm not a working trader. I've got an MBA in finance from Pepperdine. I used to have a Series 7, and I spent years in B2B sales and as a financial advisor. I got curious about whether artificial intelligence could find market signals that most people miss. So I had Claude build me a system that tests that question. I'm running this in public on this channel every week. And when the system wins, you see it. And when it loses, you see that too. Nothing gets cleaned up before it reaches you. The Sunday Stack is a show where every other week, I tell you a story from financial history that I think has something to teach us. Today's story is the panic of 1907. And the reason I picked it is that it answers a question that has been sitting underneath this entire channel since I started building it. The question is, what is the difference between confidence and conviction? And how does the system tell them apart? Let me show you. The panic of 1907 did not start at the Knickerbocker Trust. It started with copper. There was a guy named F. Augustus Heinz, and everybody called him Augustus. He was the son of a German immigrant who had made a fortune in copper mining in Butte, Montana. And by 1907, Augustus had sold most of his mining interests for around $12 million and had moved to New York City with one goal in mind. He wanted to become a Wall Street financier. Augustus had a brother named Otto, and Otto was the impulsive one. He ran a brokerage firm in Manhattan, and in early October of 1907, Otto came to Augustus with an idea. The idea was to corner the market on the stock of a company called United Copper. Now, cornering a market is a specific kind of speculative move. You buy up enough of a stock that anyone who has bet against it, anybody who has sold it short, has nowhere to go but to you when they need to buy it back. And when they come to you, you can name your own price. It's a trade that, when it works, can make you rich very quickly. And when it doesn't work, the consequences are biblical. To finance the copper market corner, the Heinz brothers needed a banker, and they went to a man named Charles W. Morse, who introduced them to a third guy named Charles Barney. Now, Barney was the president of the Knickerbocker Trust Company, one of the largest, most respected trusts in New York City. Barney had financed Morse's previous speculations and had a reputation in New York high society that put him in the same dining rooms as the Rockefellers and the Whitneys. Barney looked at the numbers, and here's the first thing that matters for our story. Barney refused the loan. He told Morse that the Hineses would need much more money than he had to make the corner work. Otto Hines decided to attempt the corner anyway. On Monday, October 14th, 1907, Otto began aggressively buying shares of United Copper. The price went from $39 to $60 in a single day. The next morning, Otto called in the short sellers and demanded they return the borrowed shares. He expected them to be unable to find the shares anywhere else, to be forced to come to him and to pay him whatever price he asked. But what actually happened is that the short sellers found their shares somewhere else, quickly and easily. Otto had miscalculated, and by Wednesday, October 16th, the price of United Copper had collapsed from $60 to $10. The copper corner had failed. And now we get to the moment in the story that I want every person watching this video to pay attention to, because the corner failing is not what caused the panic of 1907. The corner was a stupid trade by a few greedy guys. It happens in every era. It's happening somewhere probably right now while I'm recording this video. What caused the panic of 1907 was what happened next. On Friday, October 18th, 2 days after the corner collapsed, a single piece of news made it into the New York papers. The piece of news was this: Charles Barney, the president of the Knickerbocker Trust Company, had personally invested some of his own money in United Copper. He had not been part of the failed corner. He had not, as far as anyone could prove, used any of the trust company's depositor money to finance the scheme. He had simply, in his personal account, bought some of the shares of the stock that turned out to be associated with men who are now being publicly disgraced. That was the entire piece of news. Barney owned some United Copper. That was it. But here's what happened in the 72 hours that followed. By Saturday, October 19th, depositors had begun pulling money from any bank or trust that had any connection, however distant, to Hines or Morse. Not because those banks were insolvent, because the depositors had read the morning paper that their banker was friends with a man who was friends with another man who had lost a lot of money on copper. By Monday, October 21st, the board of Knickerbocker Trust met and asked Charles Barney to resign. So he resigned. And that same afternoon, the National Bank of Commerce announced it would no longer clear the Knickerbockers' checks. By Tuesday morning, October 22nd, the morning we started with at the top of this episode, the line on Fifth Avenue had become a national event. And here's the moment in the story that I find genuinely haunting. Charles Barney, having been forced out of the institution he had run for 10 years, went to see the most powerful banker in America. He went to J.P. Morgan. Morgan had returned to New York from a religious conference in Virginia, specifically to deal with the spreading panic. He had set up a war room in his library on Madison Avenue. He had assembled a syndicate of the most powerful bankers in the country. And on that Tuesday morning, with the line wrapped around the block at the Knickerbocker, Morgan made a decision. He sent a man named Benjamin Strong, who would later become the first head of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, to examine the Knickerbocker's books, to determine whether the trust was solvent, to determine whether it was worth saving. The Knickerbocker ran out of cash before Strong could finish the examination, and Morgan refused to rescue it. Weeks later, Charles Barney shot himself in the head. Now, the panic of 1907 did not end there. It got worse before it got better. The runs spread to a larger trust, the Trust Company of America, and this time Morgan changed his mind. He decided that Morgan was worth saving, and he and his syndicate poured millions of dollars of their own money into stopping the bleeding. The cost to borrow money on Wall Street, even just overnight, jumped to 150%. To put that in plain English, if you needed to borrow $100 for 1 year at that rate, you would owe $250. The market eventually steadied. The economy eventually recovered. And 6 years later, in 1913, the United States Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act, creating the central banking system we have today. The Federal Reserve exists in some real sense because of that line of people on Fifth Avenue on October 22nd, 1907. But that's not the lesson I want to leave you with today. The lesson I want to leave you with is something quieter and sitting underneath the entire story. The Knickerbocker Trust Company did not fail because it was a bad bank. It failed because the confidence it had been operating on had no convergence beneath it. And the reason I'm telling you this is that the question of confidence versus conviction is the exact question I had AI build my BuzzPulse system to answer. Now, let me explain what I mean. The Knickerbocker had on October 17th the full confidence of the American financial establishment. It had a respected president. It had a powerful board of directors. It had $62 million in deposits. It had a building on Fifth Avenue with marble floors and brass fixtures. It had, in other words, every surface signal of trustworthiness that a financial institution in 1907 could possibly project. What it did not have was independent confirmation. The confidence in Knickerbocker rested on one thing, the reputation of one man. And the moment that one man's reputation cracked, over something that had nothing to do with the actual operations of the bank, there was nothing underneath the confidence to hold it up. This is the difference between confidence and conviction. Confidence is a single signal pointing at a thing. Conviction is many independent signals pointing at the same thing at the same time. Confidence is what gets you in line on Fifth Avenue at 6 o'clock in the morning trying to get your money out, right? Conviction is what would have told you 2 weeks earlier that the line was coming. This is what I built BuzzPulse to find. Not confidence, but conviction. The system doesn't look at one signal. It looks at momentum when many independent signals, social attention, price action, options flow, fundamentals, momentum, anomaly statistics, all begin pointing at the same name at the same time without any of them knowing about the others. The technical term for that moment is convergence. And the reason the system requires convergence before it will advance a name is that single signals lie. Convergence is much harder to fake. I'm not telling you the BuzzPulse system is perfect. I'm not telling you the BuzzPulse system is perfect. I'm not telling you it never misses. I am telling you it's built on the lesson of 1907, whether the engineers who wrote the underlying math knew it or not. Now, yesterday's signal of the day is a good example. BuzzPulse advanced a mid-cap equity called BMNR. The system identified 8 independent layers of convergence on that name, not one signal, but 8. Social sentiment, anomaly, bullish momentum confirmation, institutional positioning detected in the options flow, multiple statistic anomalies in the buzz data, layers from independent inputs that did not consult each other before agreeing. Now, I'm not telling you BMNR is going to work. I'm generally not sure what's going to happen with that. But what I am telling you is that the BuzzPulse system is doing the opposite of what got the Knickerbocker in trouble. BuzzPulse is refusing to advance anything on confidence alone. It's waiting for the layers to converge before it speaks. And on weeks when the layers don't converge, like the week we just had, where the headlines were full of Boeing and Nvidia and the trip to Beijing, the system stays pretty quiet. That quiet is not the system being broken. The quiet is the system refusing to be the Knickerbocker. Now, I want to leave you with one thought before we close out. If you'd been alive in October of 1907 and you had read the New York Times every morning for a week, you would have seen exactly one piece of news about the Knickerbocker Trust before the run started. A small notice that the bank's president had personally owned some United Copper stock. That's the entire warning the public got before $62 million in deposits walked out the door in 48 hours. The reason I had AI build this system is that I do not think any human being reading the New York Times every morning should be expected to see what's coming through one piece of news. I don't think any retail investor watching this channel should be expected to spot the new Knickerbocker from a single headline. That's not how the math of the market works. What the math is actually rewarding is the patient reading of many signals at once. Independent signals, signals that don't know about each other, signals that only agree when something real is moving. That is what convergence means. 8 layers of convergence is not a number. It's the opposite of a rumor. I will see you tomorrow morning with the Monday Daily Signal. I'm Ken Carpenter. This is Invest AI Savvy, and that's the way it is.